Marcus Chen wiped sweat from his forehead as he crouched in the narrow service tunnel beneath Chicago's Grant Park. The musty air carried the smell of old concrete and rust from pipes that had been running water and power to the city above for over 40 years. His headlamp cut through the darkness, revealing another junction ahead where 3 tunnels met. "Just my luck," he muttered, checking his tablet for the building schematics. The power grid showed a fault somewhere in this section, but the exact location remained a mystery. He had been crawling through these tunnels for 2 hours already, and his supervisor would not be happy if he came back empty-handed again. Marcus worked for Chicago Municipal Services, specializing in underground infrastructure repair. Most people never thought about the miles of tunnels, pipes, and cables that kept their city running. They flicked switches, turned faucets, and expected everything to work. When it did not, they called people like Marcus to fix it in the dark, cramped spaces beneath their feet. He had been doing this job for 8 years, ever since he finished his electrical engineering degree and could not find work anywhere else. The pay was decent, and he actually enjoyed the puzzle-solving aspect of tracking down problems in the underground maze. Every tunnel told a story, every pipe had a purpose, and every cable connected to something important above. The tablet showed he needed to check the eastern tunnel first. Marcus squeezed through the opening, his tool belt scraping against the concrete walls. This tunnel was older than the others, with rougher walls and different pipe configurations. The city records showed it was built in the 1980s during a major infrastructure upgrade. 20 feet into the tunnel, his headlamp illuminated something strange. The wall on his left had a section that looked different from the rest. While most of the tunnel was smooth concrete, this area had an unusual texture, almost like metal that had been painted to look like concrete. Marcus stopped and ran his hand over the surface. It felt cool to the touch, definitely metal underneath the paint. The paint job was excellent, almost perfect, but his trained eye could spot the difference. In his years of tunnel work, he had never seen anything like this. He pulled out his phone and took several pictures, then measured the strange section. It was roughly 6 feet wide and 7 feet tall, forming a perfect rectangle in the wall. The edges were so precise they had to be machine cut. This was not some old repair job or forgotten maintenance panel. Curiosity getting the better of him, Marcus examined the edges more carefully. Near the bottom right corner, he found something that made his heart skip. A tiny gap, barely visible, ran along what appeared to be a seam. He pulled out his flashlight for better light and saw that the entire rectangular section was actually separate from the wall around it. "What the hell?" he whispered. Marcus pressed against different areas of the section, looking for any give or movement. Near the center, his pressure caused a slight shift. The entire panel moved inward about an inch, then stopped. He tried pushing harder, but nothing happened. He stepped back and studied the panel again. There had to be some kind of mechanism or trick to opening it. His engineering mind began working through possibilities. Hidden door, maintenance access, emergency exit, or maybe just a really well-disguised utility panel. The power fault he was supposed to find could wait. This was far more interesting. Marcus tried pressing different combinations of spots on the panel. Nothing worked. He looked for hidden switches or buttons around the frame. Still nothing. Finally, he tried pressing the center and then sliding his hand to the right. The panel shifted slightly in that direction. A sliding door, he realized. With both hands, he pushed the panel to the right. It moved slowly but smoothly, revealing a dark opening behind it. Cool air flowed out, carrying a strange metallic smell he could not identify. His headlamp beam disappeared into blackness beyond the opening. Marcus hesitated. This was not part of his job. He should report the discovery to his supervisor and let someone else investigate. But his curiosity was stronger than his caution. Besides, it was probably just an old storage room or abandoned utility space. He squeezed through the opening and immediately realized he was not in a normal room. The space was much larger than expected. and his footsteps echoed differently, as if he were in a cavern rather than a small chamber. The walls, floor, and ceiling were all made of the same smooth metal he had felt on the hidden door. Marcus swept his headlamp around slowly, trying to get a sense of the space. The room was roughly circular, about 30 feet across, with a ceiling that curved upward into darkness. The walls were covered with panels, screens, and devices he did not recognize. Everything had a sleek, advanced look that seemed decades ahead of current technology. "Holy shit," he breathed. In the center of the room stood a series of tall, cylindrical objects arranged in a circle. They reached from floor to ceiling and appeared to be made of some kind of transparent material. Inside each cylinder, Marcus could see complex mechanical components, though he had no idea what they might do. He approached the nearest wall panel and examined it more closely. The surface was covered with symbols and markings he had never seen before. They were not letters or numbers from any language he knew. Some looked almost geometric, while others were more flowing and organic. Small lights blinked in various colors across the panels. Marcus pulled out his phone to take pictures, but as soon as he raised it, every light in the room suddenly activated. Bright illumination flooded the space, causing him to squint and shield his eyes. When his vision adjusted, he could see the room clearly for the first time. It was definitely not human-made. The technology was too advanced, too different from anything he had ever seen. The materials looked exotic. The designs followed principles that seemed alien to human engineering, and those symbols on the walls were definitely not from Earth. Marcus felt his heart racing as the implications hit him. He was looking at what appeared to be an extraterrestrial facility, hidden beneath Chicago for who knew how long. The city records showed this tunnel section was built in the 1980s, which meant this place had been concealed for at least 30 years. He moved around the room slowly, documenting everything with his phone camera. The cylindrical objects in the center were definitely some kind of machinery, though their purpose was unclear. The wall panels seemed to be control systems or monitoring devices. Everything appeared to be powered and functional, as evidenced by the lights and displays that had activated when he entered. Near what he guessed was the back of the room, Marcus found something that made him stop cold. A section of the wall was transparent, like a window, and through it he could see another chamber. This one contained what looked like equipment designed for biological specimens. Tables with restraints, containers filled with unknown liquids, and devices that looked disturbingly medical in nature. "Jesus Christ," Marcus whispered. The full reality of his discovery was beginning to sink in. This was not just some advanced human technology that had been classified and hidden. This was genuinely alien, and it had been operating beneath one of America's largest cities for decades. The implications were staggering. Marcus backed away from the window and continued his circuit of the room. On the opposite side, he found what appeared to be a communication station. Multiple screens showed data streams, star charts, and what might have been status reports in the alien language. One screen showed what looked like a map of the local area, with Chicago clearly visible and marked with the alien symbols. As he studied the map, Marcus realized with growing alarm that the facility beneath his feet was not alone. The map showed several other locations marked with similar symbols, scattered across the Midwest. Milwaukee, Detroit, Minneapolis, and other major cities all had markings that suggested similar hidden installations. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message from his supervisor. "Status report. Find that fault yet?" He stared at the message for a long moment, then looked around the alien facility again. How was he supposed to explain this? Who would believe him? And more importantly, what was he supposed to do about it? The smart thing would be to leave immediately, seal the door behind him, and pretend he had never found this place. Report the power fault as unfindable and go home to his normal life. But Marcus knew he could not do that. This discovery was too important, too potentially dangerous to ignore. He needed more information before deciding his next move. The alien facility appeared to be abandoned or at least unoccupied at the moment, but the active displays suggested it was still operational. He needed to understand what it was for, how long it had been here, and whether it posed any threat to the city above. Marcus spent the next hour carefully documenting everything he could see. He took hundreds of photos from every angle, recorded video of the displays and their changing information, and made detailed notes about the layout and apparent function of different areas. The communication station seemed to be the most active area, with data constantly flowing across the screens. Marcus could not read the alien language, but he could recognize patterns and structures that suggested regular reporting or monitoring activities. Whatever this place was, it was definitely not abandoned. In one corner of the room, he found what appeared to be personal items or equipment, strange tools, clothing-like materials, and containers that might have held food or supplies. The alien occupants had definitely been here recently, possibly within the last few days, based on the apparent freshness of some items. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the implications. The aliens were not just using this facility for monitoring or research, they were actually present, probably living here part-time or visiting regularly. He might have stumbled into an active extraterrestrial base of operations. As he was examining the personal items, Marcus heard something that made his blood freeze. Voices, speaking in what sounded like the same alien language he had seen written on the displays. They were coming from somewhere beyond the main chamber, getting closer. Marcus quickly shut off his headlamp and phone light, plunging the room back into the softer glow of the alien displays. He crept toward the sliding door through which he had entered, trying to move as quietly as possible while his heart hammered in his chest. The voices were getting louder, accompanied by what sounded like footsteps on metal floors. Marcus reached the door and started to squeeze through, but realized he faced a terrible choice. If he fled now, he might never get another chance to learn more about this facility. But if he stayed and was discovered, he had no idea what the aliens might do to him. The voices were very close now, just around a corner or through another passage. Marcus made his decision. He slipped back into the tunnel and quickly pushed the door closed behind him, hoping it would seal properly and hide any evidence of his presence. Breathing heavily in the darkness of the service tunnel, Marcus pressed his ear to the door and listened. He could hear movement and conversation in the alien language, but the sounds were muffled by the metal barrier. After several minutes, the voices seemed to move away from the main chamber. Marcus waited another 10 minutes before moving, wanting to be sure the aliens were occupied elsewhere. When he finally crept away from the hidden door, his mind was racing with questions and possibilities. He had discovered the most important find in human history, a genuine extraterrestrial installation hidden beneath Chicago. But he was just one man with a cell phone full of pictures that could easily be dismissed as hoaxes. He needed help, but who could he trust with information this sensitive? As Marcus made his way back through the service tunnels toward the surface, he tried to develop a plan. The power fault he was supposed to find was forgotten entirely. He had much bigger problems to worry about now. The aliens clearly had advanced technology and had been operating on Earth for at least 30 years without detection. Their purpose was unknown, but the medical-looking equipment he had seen suggested they might be conducting research on humans. The map showing multiple installations meant this was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger operation. Marcus emerged from the tunnel system into the bright afternoon sunlight, feeling like he was returning from another world. Chicago bustled around him with its normal urban rhythm, completely unaware of what lay hidden beneath their feet. Cars honked, people walked past, talking on phones, and life continued exactly as it had that morning. But everything had changed for Marcus Chen. He was now the keeper of humanity's most important secret, and he had no idea what to do with it. As he walked back to his service truck, Marcus made a decision. He would not report this to his supervisor or anyone else in the municipal government. This was too big for local authorities, too sensitive for normal channels. He needed to find someone with the resources and credibility to investigate properly without causing panic or allowing the information to be suppressed. Marcus climbed into his truck and sat there for several minutes, staring at the pictures on his phone. Clear, detailed images of an alien facility that had been hiding beneath Chicago for 3 decades. The evidence was undeniable, but presenting it would require careful planning and the right contacts. He started the truck and drove slowly back toward the municipal depot, his mind already working on the next phase of what was sure to be the most important investigation of his life. The aliens thought their secret was safe, hidden behind a painted metal door in a forgotten service tunnel. They were about to learn that human curiosity and determination were not so easily fooled. 3 days passed before Marcus worked up the courage to return. He had spent sleepless nights researching online, trying to find credible people who might believe his story and have the resources to act on it. Mainstream media was out of the question. They would either dismiss him as crazy or sensationalize the story in ways that could be dangerous. Government whistleblower sites seemed risky for someone in his position. Finally, he remembered Dr. Sarah Martinez, a xenobiologist at Northwestern University who had gained attention for her serious academic papers on the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Unlike the UFO enthusiasts who filled internet forums, she was a respected scientist with tenure and reputation. If anyone would approach this methodically and responsibly, it would be her. Marcus had spent Tuesday afternoon putting together a carefully worded email with selected photos that showed clearly alien technology, but nothing that would immediately scream hoax to a skeptical academic. He had not sent it yet, wanting to gather more evidence first. That was why he found himself back in the service tunnel Thursday evening, long after his normal shift ended. He had volunteered for overtime maintenance work, giving him legitimate reasons to be in the tunnel system after hours. His supervisor was happy to have someone willing to work late on the chronic power issues in the Grant Park area. Marcus approached the hidden door more cautiously this time, listening carefully for any sounds from within before attempting to open it. The alien voices from his first visit had stayed with him, a constant reminder that this facility was actively occupied. He waited 5 full minutes in silence before slowly sliding the door open. The chamber was empty and dimly lit, just as it had been during his initial discovery. Marcus slipped inside and immediately noticed changes from his previous visit. Some of the displays showed different information, and the personal items in the corner had been rearranged. The aliens had definitely been back since Tuesday. This time, Marcus came prepared with better equipment. Along with his phone camera, he carried a small digital recorder, a tablet with translation apps, and a basic electromagnetic field detector he had borrowed from the electrical repair kit. He wanted to gather more technical data about the alien technology. Marcus started with the communication station, holding his EMF detector near the active displays. The readings were off the charts, showing electromagnetic activity far beyond anything he had encountered in normal electrical systems. Whatever power source the aliens used, it was incredibly efficient and powerful. He spent 20 minutes recording the displays, hoping that someone with linguistics expertise might eventually be able to make sense of the alien language. The star charts were particularly interesting, showing what appeared to be local stellar positions with travel routes marked between systems. As Marcus worked, he began to notice patterns in the alien text that had escaped his attention during the first visit. While he could not read the language, he could see that certain symbol clusters repeated frequently across different displays. These might represent names, locations, or important concepts that appeared in multiple contexts. One symbol cluster appeared on both the star charts and the local area map, suggesting it might be the alien's name for Earth or the solar system. Another frequently repeated pattern showed up on the medical equipment displays and the personal items, possibly indicating the alien species' name for themselves. Marcus moved to examine the transparent cylinders in the center of the room more closely. Up close, he could see that the mechanical components inside were incredibly complex, with moving parts that operated on principles he did not recognize. The cylinders hummed quietly with energy, and their internal components occasionally shifted configuration as if responding to changing operational requirements. As he watched, one cylinder's contents suddenly reorganized themselves into a completely different arrangement. The change was smooth and purposeful, clearly controlled by some advanced artificial intelligence rather than simple mechanical programming. Marcus had never seen technology that could reconfigure itself so fluidly. The EMF detector went crazy near the cylinders, registering energy patterns that fluctuated in complex waves. Marcus recorded the readings, hoping they might provide clues about the alien technology's operating principles. The energy output was enormous, but somehow contained within the cylinders without any apparent shielding. Moving to the window that looked into the biological research chamber, Marcus tried to get better pictures of the medical equipment. What he saw made him increasingly uncomfortable. The restraining tables were clearly designed for human-sized subjects, and some of the instruments looked disturbingly surgical in nature. Worse, he noticed what appeared to be biological samples in some of the containers. The liquids had a reddish tint that suggested blood or tissue preservation. Marcus felt his stomach turn as he realized the implications. The aliens were not just observing humans from a distance. They were conducting physical examinations or experiments. As Marcus photographed the biological chamber, he heard the sound that had terrified him during his first visit. Alien voices speaking in their musical but incomprehensible language. This time, however, they were coming from a different direction, and they sounded more urgent than before. Marcus quickly shut off his lights and crouched behind the central cylinders, hoping their bulk would hide him if anyone entered the main chamber. The voices were getting closer, accompanied by what sounded like multiple sets of footsteps. Through a gap between cylinders, Marcus watched as two figures entered the chamber from a passage he had not noticed before. In the dim light of the alien displays, he got his first clear look at Earth's secret visitors. They were humanoid in basic body plan, but clearly not human. Taller and thinner than normal people, with elongated limbs and fingers. Their skin had a grayish-blue tint that seemed to shimmer slightly in the artificial light. Most striking were their heads, which were proportionally larger than human heads with prominent craniums that suggested significantly larger brains. The aliens wore form-fitting clothing that appeared to be made from some advanced material, possibly the same technology that allowed their equipment to reconfigure itself. As Marcus watched, one alien's clothing shifted color and pattern to match the chamber's lighting conditions, providing perfect camouflage. The two beings moved efficiently around the chamber, checking displays and making adjustments to various controls. Their movements were graceful and precise, suggesting they were completely familiar with the facility and its operations. They communicated in their musical language, with tones and harmonics that conveyed meaning beyond simple words. Marcus remained frozen behind the cylinders, hardly daring to breathe. The aliens were less than 10 feet away, close enough that he could hear their quiet conversations and see details of their technology. One carried a device that looked like a more advanced version of his tablet, its surface displaying complex three-dimensional images that rotated and zoomed in response to touch commands. After several minutes of routine maintenance activities, one alien moved to the communication station and activated what appeared to be a long-range transmission system. The displays lit up with new information, including what looked like status reports from other locations. Marcus recognized some of the geographic patterns from his first visit. The other facilities scattered across the Midwest were checking in. The transmission session lasted about 15 minutes. with data flowing back and forth between Chicago and the other installations. Marcus could not understand the content, but the professional efficiency of the operation was clear. This was a well-organized, long-term presence on Earth, not some random exploration mission. During the communications session, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. One of the displays showed what appeared to be surveillance footage from various locations around Chicago. Street scenes, building interiors, and even what looked like private homes were being monitored in real time. The aliens were not just hiding beneath the city, they were actively watching the population above. The scope of their surveillance network was staggering, suggesting they had access to security cameras, satellites, and possibly even personal devices throughout the metropolitan area. As Marcus watched the surveillance feeds, he realized with growing horror that one of them showed the interior of the municipal services building where he worked. The aliens were monitoring the very organization responsible for maintaining the tunnels that concealed their facility. Worse, another feed showed his own apartment building. Marcus recognized his neighborhood grocery store, the coffee shop where he ate breakfast, and the gym where he worked out 3 times a week. The aliens had been watching him, possibly for years without his knowledge. The implications were terrifying. If they had such comprehensive surveillance capabilities, they probably already knew about his discovery of their facility. His visits might be part of some larger plan or experiment. Maybe they wanted him to find them, for reasons he could not begin to guess. The alien at the communication station finished the transmission session and moved to join the other being at a control panel Marcus had not examined closely. Together, they began making adjustments that caused several of the wall displays to show new information, biological data that looked disturbingly familiar. Marcus felt sick as he realized he was looking at medical information about humans. Heart rates, brain scans, genetic sequences, and other biological data scrolled past in organized displays. The aliens were not just watching human behavior, they were monitoring human biology on a massive scale. One display showed a map of Chicago with thousands of small indicators scattered across the metropolitan area. Each indicator pulsed with different colors and intensities, suggesting they represented individual humans being monitored in real time. The scale of the operation was beyond anything Marcus had imagined. The 2 aliens worked together for another 20 minutes, reviewing data and making notes on their advanced devices. Their professional demeanor and systematic approach suggested this was routine work they had been doing for years or possibly decades. Finally, the aliens concluded their tasks and prepared to leave. As they moved toward the passage through which they had entered, Marcus realized this might be his only chance to learn where they went when not in the main chamber. Against his better judgment, Marcus waited until they disappeared into the passage, then crept carefully after them. The passage was another metal corridor, similar to the main chamber but narrower and more utilitarian. It curved gently to the right and continued into darkness beyond the range of his vision. Marcus followed at a safe distance, using his phone's camera to record video of the passage and its contents. Along the walls, he noticed additional displays and control panels, suggesting the facility was much larger than just the main chamber he had discovered. After about 50 yards, the passage opened into another large room. This one appeared to be living quarters, with what looked like sleeping areas, food preparation stations, and recreational facilities designed for the aliens' physiology. The sophistication was remarkable. This was clearly a long-term residence, rather than a temporary shelter. Marcus counted sleeping areas for at least 8 individuals, meaning the Chicago facility housed a significant alien population. Combined with the similar installations in other cities, the total extraterrestrial presence in the Midwest could be dozens or even hundreds of beings. The living quarters also contained equipment that looked like manufacturing or repair facilities. The aliens were apparently capable of maintaining and upgrading their technology without outside support, making them essentially self-sufficient while operating on Earth. As Marcus documented the living quarters with his phone camera, he heard voices approaching from yet another passage on the far side of the room. More aliens were returning, possibly the full population of the facility gathering for some scheduled activity. Marcus quickly retreated back through the corridor toward the main chamber. He had seen enough to understand the scope of what he was dealing with, and staying longer would only increase his risk of discovery. By the time he reached the main chamber, Marcus could hear multiple alien voices coming from the direction of the living quarters. Whatever meeting or gathering was about to take place, he did not want to be present for it. Marcus slipped out of the facility and carefully closed the hidden door behind him. His heart was pounding from the adrenaline of spending nearly an hour in close proximity to an active alien base of operations. The risk had been enormous, but the information he had gathered was invaluable. Back in the service tunnel, Marcus sat in the darkness and reviewed what he had learned. The alien presence on Earth was far more extensive and sophisticated than his initial discovery had suggested. They had comprehensive surveillance capabilities, were conducting biological monitoring of the human population, and had been operating with impunity for decades. Most disturbing was the realization that they probably knew about his discovery. The surveillance footage of his workplace and neighborhood suggested they had been watching him long before he stumbled into their facility. His presence might even be part of some larger plan he could not understand. Marcus made his way back to the surface with a heavy heart. The weight of his discovery was becoming overwhelming, and he was beginning to understand that he could not handle this situation alone. The aliens' technological superiority and surveillance capabilities made any conventional approach extremely dangerous. As he drove home through the quiet Chicago streets, Marcus realized that every security camera, every cell phone tower, and possibly every electronic device around him might be feeding information to the aliens beneath the city. The scope of their operation meant that normal communication channels could be compromised. He would have to be extremely careful about how he contacted Dr. Martinez or anyone else. Traditional email, phone calls, and even face-to-face meetings might all be monitored by alien surveillance systems. Marcus needed to find a way to share his discovery without alerting the aliens to his plans. Back in his apartment, Marcus sat at his kitchen table and stared at the hundreds of photos and videos on his phone. He had documented the most important discovery in human history, but he was beginning to realize that sharing this information might be more dangerous than keeping it secret. The aliens had been operating on Earth for 30 years without anyone suspecting their presence. They clearly had contingency plans for maintaining their secrecy, and those plans might include dealing with humans who learned too much about their activities. Marcus Chen had wanted to be the person who exposed the truth and protected humanity from a hidden alien presence. Instead, he was beginning to understand that he might have stumbled into a situation far more complex and dangerous than he had ever imagined. As he prepared for another sleepless night, Marcus realized that his next moves would determine not just his own fate, but possibly the future of human-alien relations on Earth. The aliens might be preparing to make contact, or they might be preparing something much more sinister. Either way, Marcus was now at the center of the most important secret in human history, and he was running out of time to decide what to do about it. Marcus spent the weekend developing what he hoped was a foolproof plan. If the aliens could monitor electronic communications and surveillance systems, he would have to work around their technology using methods they might not anticipate. His engineering background had taught him that even the most sophisticated systems had weaknesses, usually in areas their designers never considered. The key insight came from his years working in Chicago's infrastructure. The aliens had clearly integrated their surveillance into modern digital systems, but they might have overlooked older, analog methods of communication. Marcus remembered that the city still maintained some old pneumatic tube systems from the early 1900s, used originally to send documents between buildings. Most had been abandoned. but a few still functioned in government buildings for secure communications. More importantly, Marcus realized that human behavior patterns might be predictable to alien observers, but truly random actions would be much harder to monitor or anticipate. If he could break his normal routines in unexpected ways, he might be able to operate outside their surveillance envelope long enough to make contact with Dr. Martinez. Monday morning, Marcus called in sick to work and drove to a used car lot on the south side of Chicago. He paid cash for an old pickup truck that had no GPS, no electronic systems beyond basic ignition, and no connection to any digital network. The dealer thought he was crazy for wanting something so primitive, but Marcus knew it was his ticket to moving around the city without electronic tracking. Using the old truck, Marcus drove to Northwestern University through a deliberately random route that would be impossible to predict. He parked several blocks away from the biology building and approached on foot, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses he had bought at a convenience store along the way. Dr. Sarah Martinez was exactly what Marcus had expected, a serious academic in her 40s with graying hair and the focused intensity of someone who spent her life pursuing difficult questions. Her office was cluttered with research papers, books about astrobiology, and photos from various scientific conferences around the world. "Mr. Chen," she said after Marcus introduced himself, "your email was quite intriguing, but I have to tell you that I receive dozens of similar claims every month. Most turn out to be misidentified natural phenomena or, frankly, elaborate hoaxes." Marcus nodded. "I understand your skepticism, Dr. Martinez. That's why I brought these." He handed her printed copies of his clearest photos, showing the alien control panels with their incomprehensible symbols and the cylindrical devices that clearly followed non-human design principles. Marcus had deliberately chosen images that showed advanced technology without revealing the facility's location or full scope. Dr. Martinez studied the photos carefully, her skeptical expression gradually changing to one of intense concentration. After several minutes, she looked up at Marcus with new respect. "The material science alone in these images is decades ahead of our current capabilities," she said slowly. "The symbol patterns follow linguistic structures I've never seen before. But they're too consistent and complex to be fabricated. Where exactly did you take these pictures?" Marcus had prepared for this question. "I can show you, but only if you're prepared to accept that everything you think you know about extraterrestrial contact is wrong. These beings have been operating on Earth for at least 30 years, and they've been watching us much more closely than anyone imagined." Dr. Martinez leaned back in her chair, processing the implications. "You're talking about active alien presence, not just visitation. That would require massive resources, long-term planning, and incredible technological sophistication." "All of which they clearly have," Marcus replied. "The question is whether we're going to continue letting them study us like laboratory animals, or if we're going to take control of the situation." After 2 hours of detailed discussion, Dr. Martinez agreed to accompany Marcus to the facility, but only after they established a safety protocol. She insisted on leaving detailed documentation with a trusted colleague to be opened if they failed to return within 24 hours. That evening, Marcus led Dr. Martinez through the service tunnels to the hidden alien facility. He had timed their visit carefully based on his observations of alien activity patterns. The facility should be minimally occupied during the late evening hours. Dr. Martinez's reaction to the alien chamber was everything Marcus had hoped for. Her scientific training allowed her to quickly assess the sophistication of the technology, while her expertise in xenobiology helped her interpret the purpose of various devices. "This is incredible," she whispered, examining the central cylinders. "These appear to be some kind of quantum processing units, operating on principles we're just beginning to understand theoretically." Marcus showed her the biological research chamber, and her expression became much more serious. "They're definitely studying human physiology," she confirmed after examining the medical equipment. but these instruments are designed for non-invasive procedures. Whatever they're doing, they're not trying to harm their subjects. What about this? Marcus asked, leading her to the communication station where he had seen the surveillance feeds. Dr. Martinez studied the displays intently, her linguistic training helping her identify patterns in the alien text. This appears to be a monitoring system, but look at the data structures. They're not just watching randomly, they're conducting a systematic anthropological study of human civilization. You mean we're specimens? More like subjects in a long-term research project, Dr. Martinez replied. The sophistication of their data collection suggests they're trying to understand human society, not exploit it. This looks more like scientific observation than military reconnaissance. As they explored the facility together, Marcus began to see the alien presence in a different light. Dr. Martinez's scientific perspective helped him understand that the being's activities, while secretive, showed clear signs of ethical constraints and genuine scientific curiosity rather than hostile intent. The question, Dr. Martinez said as they prepared to leave, is what we do with this information. These beings have clearly invested enormous resources in studying us without interference. Contact might disrupt research that could be valuable to both species. Marcus had been thinking about the same problem. But we can't just pretend we don't know about them. They're operating on our planet without our consent, using our infrastructure and studying our people without permission. That's not ethical by anyone's standards. Dr. Martinez nodded. You're right. The situation requires resolution, but it needs to be handled carefully to avoid panic or hostile reactions on either side. Over the following week, Marcus and Dr. Martinez developed a plan that would force open contact while minimizing risks for both species. Rather than exposing the aliens publicly or alerting government authorities who might respond with military force, they would attempt direct communication. Marcus had noticed during his observations that the aliens followed predictable schedules. Every few days, a single being would spend several hours alone in the main chamber, apparently performing maintenance or research tasks. That individual would be their target for first contact. The plan required Marcus to demonstrate something uniquely human that would prove intelligent understanding rather than accidental discovery. Dr. Martinez suggested that mathematical or scientific concepts would be most likely to establish credibility with beings advanced enough to operate such sophisticated facilities. They prepared carefully, creating a presentation that would demonstrate human understanding of physics, mathematics, and basic xenobiology. Marcus learned enough of the alien symbol patterns to create simple messages, and Dr. Martinez prepared scientific diagrams that should be comprehensible to any technologically advanced species. The confrontation came on a Thursday evening when Marcus detected the familiar pattern of a single alien working alone in the facility. He entered the chamber carrying a tablet with their prepared presentation and a simple gift, a collection of human music, literature, and scientific papers that represented the best of human creativity and knowledge. The alien noticed him immediately, and for a tense moment, Marcus thought he might be looking at his last few seconds of life. Instead, the being stood perfectly still, observing him with obvious intelligence and curiosity rather than alarm. Marcus slowly activated his presentation, showing mathematical sequences, scientific diagrams, and representations of human society that demonstrated his species' intelligence and peaceful intent. The alien watched intently, occasionally making notes on its own device. When Marcus finished his presentation, the alien moved to one of the wall panels and began displaying its own information. What followed was humanity's first genuine conversation with an extraterrestrial intelligence conducted through mathematics, scientific principles, and gradually more sophisticated symbolic communication. The alien, who Marcus came to think of as the ambassador, explained through patient exchanges that their species had been studying human development for decades as part of a broader survey of intelligent life in the galaxy. Their concealment had been intended to avoid influencing human social and technological development during a critical phase of civilization. Marcus learned that the aliens, who called themselves something that roughly translated as observers, had been monitoring dozens of developing species throughout the local stellar region. Their research was part of a galactic community's effort to understand how intelligence evolved and developed across different worlds. The ambassador expressed surprise and respect for Marcus's discovery of their facility, noting that his persistence and problem-solving approach demonstrated exactly the kind of human traits their research had identified as particularly valuable. Most species in their database had required much longer to develop the curiosity and technical skills necessary for such a discovery. Over several hours of careful communication, Marcus and the ambassador established basic protocols for ongoing contact. The observer agreed to arrange a formal meeting with human representatives, while Marcus promised to limit knowledge of their presence to carefully selected individuals who could handle the information responsibly. The breakthrough came when the ambassador shared star maps showing the locations of other intelligent species the observers had contacted. Humanity was apparently much closer to galactic readiness than anyone had suspected, and the observers were preparing to recommend Earth for inclusion in their interstellar community. Marcus's discovery had accelerated that timeline considerably. By demonstrating that humans could detect concealed alien operations and approach contact rationally rather than with fear or hostility, he had provided exactly the evidence the observers needed to support their recommendation. 3 months later, Marcus stood in a secure conference room at Northwestern University, watching Dr. Martinez present their findings to a carefully selected group of scientists, diplomats, and military officials. The formal first contact protocols they had established with the observers had led to the most important diplomatic negotiations in human history. The aliens' 30-year study of humanity had provided them with detailed understanding of human psychology, social structures, and technological capabilities. Their recommendation to the galactic community emphasized humanity's curiosity, adaptability, and ethical development as qualifications for interstellar citizenship. Marcus reflected on how his routine maintenance work in a Chicago service tunnel had ultimately led to humanity's acceptance into a community of intelligent species spanning hundreds of worlds. The observers had been impressed not just by human technology, but by the kind of persistent curiosity and problem-solving determination that had led him to investigate an anomalous wall panel in a forgotten tunnel. The ironic thing, Dr. Martinez had told him recently, is that they chose to study us because they were impressed by human ingenuity and determination. Your discovery of their facility just proved their point. As the formal negotiations continued and humanity prepared for its new role in galactic civilization, Marcus returned to his work, maintaining Chicago's infrastructure. The city still needed its tunnels, pipes, and cables to function, even if those tunnels now occasionally hosted diplomatic meetings between species separated by thousands of light years. The hidden facility beneath Grant Park had been converted into humanity's first interstellar embassy, where human and observer scientists worked together to prepare Earth for the technological and social changes that would come with galactic membership. The medical equipment Marcus had initially found so disturbing had been revealed as advanced healing technology, offered freely to help humanity address diseases and genetic conditions. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from his supervisor. "Another power fault in the Grant Park tunnels. Can you check it out?" He smiled and typed back, "On my way. This one might take a while to figure out." Some problems, Marcus had learned, were worth the time and effort it took to solve them properly. His curiosity about a strange wall panel had led to the most important discovery in human history, proving that sometimes the most extraordinary opportunities were hidden in the most ordinary places. As he gathered his tools and headed back into the tunnels beneath Chicago, Marcus reflected on the Observer Ambassador's parting comment from their first meeting. "Your species possesses something rare in the galaxy, the determination to investigate what others would ignore. That quality will serve you well among the stars." Human curiosity and ingenuity had unlocked the galaxy. Marcus Chen, maintenance worker and accidental diplomat, had helped prove that humanity was ready to take its place among the stars simply by being unable to leave a mystery unsolved. The power fault could wait a few more minutes. Marcus wanted to enjoy the moment when everything had changed because one human refused to walk past something that looked out of place. Sometimes the most important discoveries began with the simple question, "What the hell is that?"